Welcome councillors, gallery and staff to this meeting, 19th of May 2020. I'll open the meeting with the acknowledgement of country. Richmond Valley Council recognises the people of the Bundjalung Nations as custodians and traditional owners of this land, and we value and appreciate the continuing culture and connections to lands, their living culture and their unique role in the life of this region in the past, present and future. Mr General Manager, can you read the prayer, please?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Dear Lord, we serve to meet our community, to use our resources wisely and well, to represent all members of our community fairly, to make decisions that promote the common good. We recognise our responsibility to the past and the future, and the rights and needs of both individuals and community. As trusted servants, we seek blessings on our deliberations and on our efforts here today. May we act wisely and well. Amen.
Amen. Apologies, there's nil apologies. We have a full contingent. Mayoral minute, no mayoral minute. Confirmation of the minutes, 6.1 on page 6. Get a mover of those, please.
Move that way.
Councillor Humphries. Seconder, Councillor Morrissey. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. The Internal and Audit Risk Committee, minutes 6.2. Get a mover, please.
Moved.
Councillor Simpson. Second. Councillor Hayes. Put that motion. All those in favour? Carried. Page 8, item 7, matters arising out of the minutes. Any council have any matters arising? I have one out of the ordinary meeting, April. The question was asked by Councillor Simpson. It's on item 5.2, page 7 of the attachments, about the membership of the Country Mayors Association. Why hasn't council been a member previously? Council has been had membership before, but the previous mayor in 2013 pulled out of the Country Mayors Association, so we're now rejoining. The other one is in the Internal Audit Risk Committee. There was an apology given for the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Morrissey, but it's not noted in the minutes, so I'd like those noted, please. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Any council have any declarations of interest?
Yes. 18.1, the Community Financial Assistance Program, a non-pecuniary.
Non-pecuniary. I think, councillors, you need to give the reason why you're a member of an association or a club. Is that correct?
Can I just make a comment? You've actually delegated the approval authority for those grants to me as General Manager, so I don't believe that you need to declare an interest this evening if it's in that matter.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any other declarations for other items? Nil. Petitions, nil. Notice of motion. Mayor's attendances, I'll move those on page 9.
Second.
Questions? Put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried. Page 10, item 12, delegates' reports. 12.1, delegates from reports from Rouse County Council. Can we get a mover, please?
Move.
Councillor Humphries. I'll second that. Any discussion? Questions?
Just a question, Mr Mayor. On page 12, on number 3, except for maintenance activities, is that just routine maintenance?
On page 12, number 3, the fluoride. Yeah. Yeah, it's just a report that comes to council every quarter, and it's just a report and an update. That's all. Yeah, yeah, and any problems, but there's been no problems. So, yeah. Quarterly report. No other items? I'll put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried. Page 14, matters determined without debate. Has any councillors got any items they'd like to call? Councillor Simpson.
14.1, 15.2 and 16.1. Thank you.
16.1. Any other items for councillors? That covers mine too, so I'll look for a motion then please for item 14.2, 15.1, 17.1 and 17.2 please. Can I get that?
Second.
Councillor Morrissey. Councillor Humphrey second. You're right. Moved by Councillor Morrissey and second Councillor Humphreys. Good. Mover was Councillor Morrissey and second was Councillor Humphreys. One's been called. 16.1 was called. So we have 14.2, 15.1, 17.1, 17.2. 14.1's been called, 15.2's been called and 16.1's been called. Okay. Put that motion, all those in favour? Carried. Before we debate, when I call for a motion on 14.1, I believe there's a presentation, Mr General Manager. Could I ask Mr Gator to, please? Thank you.
Okay, this is a presentation on the current next year's budget that's about to go out for public exhibition. Key assumptions in the budget: general rates increasing by 5.5% in line with our SRV. The domestic waste charges going up 5.14%. Non-domestic waste 5.06%. Sewer annual charge 2.81% and water annual charge 5%. Other user charges and fees are generally increased at 3% in line with our long-term financial plan. Interest and investment revenue estimated between 1.5 to 4% over the 10-year long-term financial plan. Grants and contributions, our financial assistance grants has been indexed at 2.26%. Assumptions for expenses: salaries have gone up 6.97%. Electricity has actually decreased at 8%. Materials and contracts at CPI of 1.57%. Insurance has actually decreased also at 7.65%, and that was due to our tender that we adopted not long ago. And other expenses have been predicted at 2.5%. Loan borrowings, 4 million across the 4-year delivery program. 2 million of that is in next year's budget for the construction of Cell 6 at Namoona. No new borrowings in water or sewer funds across the 10-year long-term financial plan, and interest rates on borrowings have been predicted at 3.25 to 4%. The draft budget summary and cash results: so operating income at 62.6 million, capital grants and contributions at just over 8 million, which gives us a total income of just over $70 million. Expenses at 67.2 million, which gives us an operating result of 3.5 million. Take out the grants and contribution and the operating result is 4.589 million deficit. We've got a capital expenditure program of 31.883 million. This will all be funded by just over 8 million in reserve funding and a $290,384 surplus in cash. Our major capital works for the year in the budget: casino pool upgrade at 1.65 million, Evans Head Library upgrade at 480,000, Collie Park field enhancements at 127,000, Broadwater use space at 107,000, Rapville Showgrounds, Sports Ground, at 170,000, Casino Showground at 420, Coraki Caravan Park amenities upgrade at 400,000, Rapville Hall and Community Precinct at 1.07 million, General Community Hall upgrades at 100,000, Urban road renewals at 1.4 million, sealed rural local roads at 3.3 million, sealed regional roads at 1.1 million, unsealed rural local roads at 440,000, footpath renewals at 219,000, 3.15 million for the Northern Rivers Rail Trail, real estate development at 2.08 million, Namoona landfill, capping of cells 1 to 4 at stage 1 at 1.28 million, Namoona landfill, the cell 6 construction at 3 million. Fogo processing facility at 550,000, stormwater renewals at 644,000, water main renewals at 405,000, casino raw water pump station solar installation at 350,000, casino pump station 4 upgrade at 220,000, casino sewage treatment plant renewals at 910,000, Coraki sewage treatment plant renewals at 611, Evans Head at 422, casino depot renewals at 300,000, and our fleet replacement program at 2.36 million. The other thing that we have in the draft revenue policy that's going out for public comment is new fee structure for the NRLX. We're going out, we've got 2 fee structures in the revenue policy for comment. The first one is generally an increase of 3% on the current year's fees, noting that there was no increase last year. Option 2 is a scaled vendor fee structure based on price cattles are sold for, and that increases at 3% per annum. Under both options, the agent's business usage fee increases from 75 cents to $1 per head. With the move to Stock live streaming, a fee of $2 per head is proposed, and the intent of this new fee structure is to set fees and agree to a licence permits for a 3-year period. That's the end. That's it.
Councillors, is there any questions? Councillor Simpson. Oh, sorry, Councillor Hayes.
The 3.2 million in there for the rail trail, is that reported in that report? Can it be separated rather than just be, because it's in amongst all the council stuff that we're spending in the local government area, and the rail trail's a regional thing? Should that be in there so when people look at it they think we're putting $3.2 million in the rail trail?
Well, it's actually coming out of our budget, but we know it's grant money.
Yeah,
but
that's
it is
right, but it doesn't really show it.
But it's an expenditure of our council, and that's our budget.
I just wonder if it can be reported differently than that, that's all, when it goes out for advertisement.
Well, it'll be out there that no doubt the federal government wants some recognition that it's their money, so the people will know. Yeah.
Just to say, we can just add a note to that. It's it's fully funded by the federal government. They've given us grant funding of $7.5 million, so we can just make that point just so that it's clear. Yeah, that Yeah, yep. So we can make sure we do that with comms. But obviously, it's like a lot of the grants that we're successful with, they come into our budget. We're the project manager, but it is a good point. Yeah, good point.
But it's only in our council area, that section. And it's like the regional sale yards, there was 7 million there. It's a regional facility, but it's in our area. So, and the swimming pool, there's 3-point-something million from the federal government there. Yeah. But that's fine. If we want to put that note in, then it can be done. Yeah. Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, could I move the recommendation with an addition of a dot point 3, which is that council write to our local member, Chris Galaptis, the Ministers for Local Government and Emergency Services and Local Government New South Wales, expressing its concern in regard to the impact on council's financial performance by having to fund ongoing increases in the emergency services levy.
Yep. A seconder, please.
I'll second.
Councillor Hayes. Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, I mean, obviously good job, Mr Gator and the finance team in putting together another difficult budget, which is impacted significantly, particularly on our unrestricted cash, by the very large increases in the emergency services levy, around $300,000 per year. When we're looking at unrestricted cash surpluses in the small amounts of $100,000 to $300,000 per year, an impact of this is a significant impact to our council, not just our council, but many of the local councils around the area. So I think it's prudent that we voice our concerns to the local ministers and lobby to try and have something done about that.
Any other councillors? Councillor Humphrey?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I certainly support that addition to the recommendation. It's a real slap because we've just come out of, these fireys, they've been our heroes and our champions. And I totally agree with the law that the New South Wales Parliament has passed, but to just keep dumping more and more of this financial burden on local government with only a one-off and a reprieve, we certainly do have to lobby. If it does have to keep going up, we certainly have to lobby so that we do get funding to cover the shortfall there. Other things within, it'll be interesting. I'm glad that while the draft is out to Exhibition, Council will be talking with stakeholders about the NRLX, those two options. So we won't be letting the grass grow under our feet if we'll be going out to consultation during that period. That will be excellent. We'll have an idea of contact with the community as well as the feedback from the submissions. There was one other thing, if I could just find it. No, it's okay. I can't read mine. Can I?
Yeah.
The new projects that have been included in the next 4-year period, that's an excellent selection of projects, something for most people within our community. So I'm glad that they've also been included and fully funded.
Any other speakers? I just support that part 3 of the recommendation. I know the Shires Local Government Association of New South Wales are really pressing for this, and we may be in surplus this year, but I know that in the next 3 years it contributes, that extra levy, to us going into deficit. So I think we really need to make that point. On the $32 million capital works program, it's a big chunk of money, but I'm rather pleased that the extended term will make this council available to see a lot of these projects that we'd planned over the last 4 years either be started or come to fruition, and I think that's a good reward for these councils. We've really worked hard to see these projects come in line, and now being funded, a lot of them. I think it's a good outcome for us and our community, so good to see. Any other speakers? Councillor Hayes.
A couple of minor things. Section 64 and 64A charges, are we going to change them to section 711s and 12s at any point in the revenue policy? So they have changed.
Thanks for picking that up. We'll make that change.
Yeah. And page 54, bottom of page 54, water meter charges for getting the water service put on. Page of the revenue policy, sorry. Page 54, down the bottom. Right down the bottom, 20 millimetre water service is $720, and so is, on the next page, so is a 25 millimetre service. Is that right? I know it's only for the underbore, but the meters and that would have to be dearer.
We can check that with the guys, whether there is a cost differential in the size.
Well,
You
looks
think
like it
that-
might have been wrong last year too. There's a 32 jumps up.
we can check that obviously before it goes out to the community. Thanks.
Can I ask a general question? I spoke before when we were talking about drought recovery stuff and water storage for casino about the water headworks charges, the difference between casino and the lower river when you add them up, and there's a difference there. And I talked about maybe putting a charge on the casino, on those headworks charges to put away for future water storage works. Is this the time to look at that, or is it something we've got to look at? Because, you know, a new policy goes out once it's adopted. I'm just thinking if we were to discuss and put something like that in there, we probably need to look at it now rather than later. It's an opportunity to get some money put away for water storage opportunities a bit, you know, later down the track, that's all.
So is this issue, there's a differential between Rouse charges and what...
I did some sums there one day.
Yeah,
and there's
I
about
recall the issue.
$1,300 difference between the total amount of water headworks charges in this end of the council to the other end of the council. Okay, so I thought, being casino, they're cheaper. They're, you know, if we can increase them maybe gradually or over a period of time up, so that we're all paying exactly the same, and that money gets put away as a levy towards future water storage, because you're going to have to do something. You're going to have to get money from somewhere at some point in time. I just thought it's a slow way of building up a reserve, and the money's there.
I know you've got to be able to qualify why you're charging those services, and Rouse has got a very, very big works program coming up, like tens of millions of dollars. So they've got to be able to say, we are charging this fee to cover that. If we haven't got that work, we just can't bank money for no reason. So we'd have...
If we had a... we had a program that we were going to bank that money for future water storage for casino.
Well, that program will come out of that study that we're doing, that we got the funding from the state government, and then that could be looked at then.
Yeah, so it's too early.
Yeah, well, we haven't got the
Well, that
works
was the
program.
question, is it? Yeah.
I noticed Mr Gator said there's no planned borrowings, so it'd be hard to go and charge someone if you've got no work planned to do it. So major work, but out of that study, I think that will come, and then you can say, well, we are charging this headworks for those headworks into the future.
If we went down that track, we're not going to be able to do it until we revise this revenue policy at a later date. No. So
Well, there's always next year.
next year, yeah.
And with the timing of that report, which off the top of my head I think is due around March next year, so the outcomes of that, you know, we can consider at that time and potentially be something we build, if you know, if it stacks up, build into our revenue policy consultation for the next financial year.
Good question, mate. Any other speakers? Councillor Simpson.
No need to sum up. Thank you.
Right, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Carried. (15.2) is our next item.
Yep, I'll move the recommendation.
Second.
And just like to ask a question about the Capital Works program.
Just before you do, we have a presentation and a quarter review. Like, do you want to ask the question now, or
no,
it may be answered
give
in
the presentation. It may well be answered through that.
Mr Gator.
Okay, Council's quarterly budget review for the March 2020 quarter. The budgeted unrestricted cash surplus has decreased from a surplus of 240,000 to a surplus of 122,000. Use of restricted funds or reserve funding has decreased from 3.6 million deficit to 785,000 surplus, which is a reduction of 4.388 million. Our net operating result improved from 3.1 million surplus to 4.05 million surplus, an improvement of 494,000. And our net operating result before capital items has improved from a $3.99 million deficit to a $3.82 million deficit, a difference of 172,000. Our recommended changes for income is 1.96 million in natural disaster funding for the Mile Creek and Rapville bushfires, 250,000 for bushfire resilience and economic recovery grant. 120 of this will be spent on economic development projects and 130 on tourism and regional branding projects. $150,000 grant for the amenities block at the Coralcry Caravan Park, 200,000 increase in grant funding for the Northern Rivers Rail Trail, 180,000 increase in heavy haulage contributions, 1.2 million decrease in asset sales at Canning Drive residential subdivision. That has just been pulled over into the next year's budget, so it'll actually be carried forward, and it is included in the budget that's going on display. 334,000 increase in operating revenue at council's landfills, 120,000 grant received for a FOGO compost facility at Namoona landfill, and 235,000 decrease in interest on investment budgets due to COVID-19. Our T Corp investments have taken a bit of a hit there. Recommended changes for expenditure: 1.9 million increase in expenditure for the Mile Creek and Rapville bushfires, 150,000 brought in for the amenities block at Coralcry Caravan Park, 269,000 reduction in sealed urban road budgets with works being carried over to the 2021 year, 130,000 for tourism projects and regional branding from the bushfire stimulus grant, 150,000 carried over until 2021 for the Northern Rivers Rail Trail project, 2 million carried over until 2021 for industrial land acquisition, 200,000 additional landfill levy due to capping at the Bora Ridge landfill, 295,000 carried over until 2021 for the Bora Ridge transfer station upgrade, 299,000 carried over for stormwater drainage works, 593,000 carried over for water supply capital works, and 236,000 carried over for sewage supplies capital works. Other recommended changes: our income from continuing operations increase of 3.286 million. That now sits at 72.384 million for the year. Total expenses from continuing operation increased by 336 million, and that sits now at 68.333 million. Our loan funding remains unchanged. There's no loans in this current year's budget, and our capital expenditure decreased by 4.65 million. So our capital works program now sits at 19.951 million. Any questions?
Yeah, it was half answered. So I mean, my question was around the projects that aren't being undertaken as part of the capital works program. So there's about 4.3 million. I picked up from that probably 2 million is industrial land acquisition, which has been put off to next year. But that still leaves another 2.3 million in capital works projects that are either not happening or held over. What are the major ones of those?
That's the ones that I've virtually just covered then in the, you mean you want a detailed breakup?
Of the capital works.
Yeah, okay. I'd have to get back to you on that. I haven't got that detail with me, I'm sorry.
Okay. See, right, there's the real estate one. Another one was around 300,000 is being carried into the next financial year to add to the budget that we already have allocated for the stormwater drainage project for Evans Head. There's been quite a lot of detailed investigations happening over the last couple of years. So that's another example.
There's a fair few sewerage projects there that are like the relining of main air valve renewal at Broadwater. There's refurbishment of drying beds at Coracai, reuse automation at Coracai. So it's just various small projects that are make up, I suppose, it seems a large number, but when you actually look at the actual projects, they're like 84,000 here and 20,000 here, and there's quite a few of them that have been carried forward. They're just not going to get a chance to do this current financial year.
Yeah, okay. Is it
But
possible
I
for
can
us
get
to-
you a full,
yeah,
full
just grab
list,
a
definitely. Yeah, detailed
Thank you.
list, not a problem.
Because it's about 25% of the capital works budget, or 20% maybe of the capital works budget. So it's a significant chunk, and we've always kind of said that we pull out all stops to try and deliver our capital works program. Obviously, there's been some hiccups this year with, and that may be some of the reason that it's not happening. But perhaps, yeah, if we can have a list and some of the reasons behind why they're being held over, that'd be great.
Mr Mayor, if I could just ask for a comment. I'm looking at page 34, where it says that the plant purchase budget has been reduced by the 889,000, saying there that it's hard to source plant. With the ease and restrictions of COVID-19, I just wondered how real that threat is to council without not being able to source plant.
So there's actually a couple of big expensive pieces of plant that we haven't been able to get because of COVID-19. So they are due to be delivered early in the new year, in the first couple of months of the new financial year. That's why we've actually taken those ones out, and it's all due to the COVID-19 impacts. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other question, councillors? Councillor Simpson? Put that motion then. All those in favour? Carried. We now move to 16.1 on page 43. Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, I'll move the recommendation.
Seconder, please.
Second.
Councillor Cornish.
Just a question in relation to the financial cost around this tender. So we're being asked to approve a tender, but there's no cost comparison or estimates for us at all. If approved, I'm wondering what the financial impact is. The report says that we've spent $418,000 over the last 2 years in chemicals, but it says nothing about what that cost will be moving forward with the approval of this tender.
Yeah, it's a difficult figure to put your finger on, because it'll all depend on what actually chemicals we need, and it's actually a panel tender. So in these circumstances, because usually we need those chemicals quite quickly, if one supplier that might be the cheapest on that panel can't get you the figure, or can't get you the chemical, you then have to go to the next one down the list. So they submit a list of prices. So it will depend. You don't always use the cheapest tenderer on the panel for a certain product. It'll just be depend on availability.
Sorry, if I would just add to that. So an example, obviously it's mostly to do with our water treatment plant chemicals, of which it varies. Obviously when we're going through the drought with blue-green algae outbreaks in the river, we needed to use a lot of powder-activated carbon. So it goes in early in the treatment process at the raw water pump station, but we use a lot of it. And so that, during that period, would have spiked. So I'm just using that as an example. And so the idea of the panel tender is that we go to the cheapest for that product where they have it available. And certainly through that period, the cost of the powder-activated carbon climbed quickly because basically there was a shortage of supply. So that's an example of what we face. So it does vary. I would expect it would be in that vicinity of the 400,000, but the actual chemicals that you need can vary. So that makes it difficult to give a specific, this tender costs 400,000. But it's in there as an indication of what we have spent for the last 12 months.
Is there any way then, going forward, council could be let known of what we are expending on these products?
Yep.
Just in one of the...
Oh, no, I think it's a good
matters-
question. We obviously need to understand the tender limits are there for a reason, and you have to approve it. So you obviously want to know what you're approving. So, I mean, my indication would be that it'll be in the vicinity of what we spent over the last 12 months. Hopefully, it'll be less if our climatic conditions settle a little bit. Obviously, when you get the blue-green algae, it really does add costs to our treatment processes.
Bearing in mind we are doing some upgrades out there too, so that may change the chemical use. But I just think even if we get something in the matters for information every quarter or 6 months, we'd be good. Happy with that?
Can I just make a comment? Wouldn't council's business across the board have items like this where they're buying stuff all the time and there's price increases and, you know, for stock like oils and God knows what else you've used to run? So it's not out of the ordinary to have something that hasn't got an end figure on it. It's just day-to-day operational stuff you've got to have, and you've got to pay what the market's, you know, selling it for. But
Yeah, like fuel's a classic example. It fluctuates. We obviously go to tender. We use panel tenders for that, but there is a bit of fluctuation through the year. So I suppose in future we just need to include what is estimated for the duration of this panel tender, so that potential financial requirement is clear for you.
Councillor
look,
Simpson?
take all of that on board, but just as a layperson read the recommendation and the way the report's written, it looks like that it's not necessarily a panel tender. I mean, it actually lists each chemical and who the supplier will be. So it kind of gives the impression that we're approving that particular supplier for that particular chemical. So that's just one thing about, I guess, clarifying it in the future. And the other thing would be, I think you could do a comparison of if we used this many chemicals over the last 2 years, based on the prices that these guys submitted, this is what it would cost moving forward. So there was some sort of comparison there, because as that reads now, there's nothing. We're approving a tender that has no financial comparisons there whatsoever. I don't know if we're approving a 50% increase on what it was over the past 2 years or whether it's less. Anyway, just my comments for the future.
Yep. Any other councillors? Councillor Simpson, was that your closing comment? Put that motion. All those in favour? Carried. Page 58, matters for information. A mover, please. Councillor Morrissey. Second.
Second.
Councillor Lyons. Councillor Morrissey.
Just one, through you, Mr Mayor. The grant application submitted on page 69, casino showground fencing. What sort of area would that be looking at?
Sorry, what page?
69.
69, thank you. Mr General Manager.
I have no idea.
So this grant application was part of a recent $15 million fund that was announced to support showgrounds across New South Wales by the New South Wales Government. It had very specific criteria the works needed to be done in a short space of time. So that's why there's a couple of projects identified there for the casino showground. Is some improvements to the pavilion, the Show Society office and the fencing. So that's, So again, it was a $15 million fund across the whole state, very specific criteria. And it was obviously the intent is to share the money around all showgrounds, of which there are more than there are the number of councils. So we're talking, I don't know the exact figure, but there's 128 councils. I think there's more than that in showgrounds. So we needed to be able to deliver it, I think, in a short space of time. So we focused principally on some maintenance type activities that we could get done quickly. And part of the aim is to stimulate the local economy, so get it done locally.
Any other councillors? Councillor Lyon?
Could I just have a little bit of clarity on the Richmond River flood model study, please?
What page are you on and what?
Same page, 69?
Okay, thank you.
That's obviously we're looking at flood. Our flood, we have different flood models across the Richmond Valley area, which can create some challenges, especially where you get to the point where they sort of overlap or bounce off the edges, so to speak. So we are looking at, it's been on our books for some time to get a flood model done across the whole area. It obviously comes into play in particular around development. The flood modelling needs to be good. So an opportunity has obviously arisen for some funding for that. We have applied previously and been unsuccessful. So we're having another go so that hopefully we can get that flood modelling updated so that when we're considering those things, it's right up to the minute. We have flood modelling and we use that and it's effective, but it's an area that we've identified we can get renewed. So,
Will there be consultation with the adjoining councils, like Lismore, and so that they get it the same?
With the flood model, there has been attempts to do a regional flood model. I think might let Director Jones comment further on that.
Through you, Mr Mayor. We have attempted on several occasions to have a sort of a regional approach to flood modelling in catchments. To date haven't been 100% successful, but it's definitely something that's being discussed again, and that would definitely be our aim. Where possible, we'll ensure that if we're successful with this funding application, we'll try and endeavour to get the flood models of our neighbouring councils to at least interact on those interfaces between our LGAs. The problem's been over years, many different models and lots of time in between, and there's inconsistencies across the catchment. So the aim is ultimately to have a catchment-based flood model that spreads over numerous LGAs.
Maybe that's something that the JO can look at. Just ask them about it, put it up in them. Any other speakers?
Yeah, 18.7, the sale of the Evans Head Aerodrome. The conclusion paragraph, it says the sale of the Evans Head Aerodrome had a long and complex history, which it did. The matter has recently been settled with the purchaser being the Evans Head Air Park Proprietary Limited. It is Council's understanding that the purchaser wishes to develop the site for an air park. However, we will take the opportunity to review the previous Evans Head Air Park proposal prior to progressing. What's their intent in that? Are we going to get down the track a bit and the air park's just going to disappear into thin air and they're going to propose something else there? Is that what you're thinking when you say that they will take the opportunity to review the previous Evans Head Air Park proposal?
Mr. General Manager.
No, there was, as you're aware, there was a DA lodged for an air park. That DA, through the course of the last couple of years, was withdrawn due to the number of issues that was on the stop the clock for. So that decision was made. So obviously, with the issues with that DA, that would needed to have been addressed for it to be determined successfully. It's obviously an opportunity for them to review what fits with, because obviously there's a number of agreements over the aerodrome that any, being a state heritage listed item, that any development would need to meet. So they've indicated that, yep, they are looking at an air park type development, but obviously they will revisit exactly what is within that, as the new owner of the land. It's their right to do so. So they'll be doing that, and I suppose we will find out either when they come and seek development approval advice from us or decide to lodge a DA.
Just why I said it is like community expectation down there is we've sold it to be developed as an air park. You know, that's what they think is going on. They don't realise that, you know, that could be out the door and something else could happen. Their expectation is that it's developed as an air park.
Bear in mind it has many heritage limitations on it.
And the agreements and requirements of the site would severely restrict developing it for other purposes. I mean, there's requirements around maintaining the runway, for example. The runway needs to be available for public use. So there's agreements that they will be required to comply with that keep it operating as an aerodrome.
Any other speakers? Just a quick comment on page 66. I noticed that the stage 2 of the Northern Rivers Livestock Exchange, I think we've received our final payment there. A lot of members of the community see that you get a $7 million grant and they think it's paid within a week or two, and you get on with the job. But as we can see, that facility's been operating now fully open for over a year, and Council's been carrying that project out of our own finances for a long time, so it's good to see that come to conclusion now, that $7 million. No other speakers? Councillor Morris, you want to close? Okay, I'll put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried. Page 90, questions on notice. No questions. Questions for the next meeting in writing. Has any councillor got any questions in writing? Nil. We now move to item 21, matters referred to closed council. Need a motion to go into closed committee. Councillor, please. Councillor Morrissey, second Councillor Lyons. Mr General Manager, has there been any written representation made regarding this meeting going into closed council? If so,
No, there hasn't been, sorry, no.
Thank you. Are there any verbal representations from the members of the public? Nil. Put that motion. All those in favour? Carried. We're now back in open council. Mr General Manager, could you read the resolution from closed session, please?
For the item closed council, the council write off the excess water charge as detailed in the report that was considered in closed council.
Thank you, councillors and staff. That concludes the meeting. I'll now close it. Safe trip home. Thank you.